The fact is that reporters, one of their jobs is to create heroes for the American public. I guess you're a little dishonest. You do not write anything. If you are following your own army, you do not write anything that might be interpreted as being unfriendly or not patriotic. I think it is very difficult to be a critical, tough, honest reporter during a war.
Private Andrew A. Rooney was a very junior war correspondent with Stars and Stripes, the new Army newspaper, one of thousands of reporters dispatched to the far corners of the world who struggled under tight official censorship and an honest personal desire to report nothing that might undermine the war effort.
Ready to go on an all-American exploit of war.
Many war correspondents were little more than cheerleaders, offering mostly upbeat, optimistic accounts of events they'd never seen from miles behind the lines. But some risked their own lives to get at least a little closer to the truth. Ernie Pyle from Dana, Indiana, was a seasoned columnist working for the Scripps Howard papers, who saw it as his duty to tell American families back home as much as the censors and his own sensibilities would allow of what life for their men was really like.
So I don't know. Is war dramatic or isn't it? Certainly there are great tragedies, unbelievable heroics, even a constant undertone of comedy. It is the job of us writers to transfer all that drama back to you folks at home. Most of the other correspondents have the ability to do it. But when I sit down to write, here's what I see instead. Men at the front suffering and wishing they were somewhere else. Men in routine jobs just behind the lines, belly aching because they can't get to the front. All of them desperately hungry for somebody to talk to besides themselves. No women to be heroes in front of. Damn little wine to drink. Precious little song. Cold and fairly dirty. Just toiling from day to day in a world full of insecurity, homesickness, and a dull sense of danger. The drama and romance are here, of course, but they're like the famous falling tree in the forest. They're no good unless there's somebody around to hear. Ernie Pyle.
The 7th Army overran Strasbourg, but halted on the Rhine's west bank. Patton's 3rd Army took Metz and secured 3 bridgeheads across the Saar, but could proceed no further until it could get enough fuel to go on. In the north, 2 attacks were launched by the American 1st Army. One was aimed at the German city of Aachen. The other intended to sweep the enemy from the 50 wooded square miles just south of that city, called the Hurtgen Forest.
Each morning just before sunrise, when things were fairly quiet, I could hear a steady humming sound like bees in a hive as the bluebottle flies became active with the onset of daylight. They rose up off the corpses, rocks, refuse, brush, and wherever else they had settled for the night, like a swarm of bees. Their numbers were incredible.
Laverne, Minnesota. The death of Private Russell Wilder in France should be a sobering reminder for all of us that grim and tragic days lie ahead. The days of kisses and cheering for the Americans are over. No longer are they going to be welcomed with flowers. They are to the point now where they come as invaders of the land of the enemy. The casualties are going to be many. We can have no reason for relaxing. The toughest going lies ahead. Al McIntosh, Rock County Star-Herald.
Sid Phillips did his best to hide his fear from his family.
August 17th, 1942. Dear folks, nothing much to say except that I'm okay and doing fine. Haven't heard from you yet. I hope everybody is doing okay. I'll have plenty to tell you. I guess you can read the papers. Love, Sid. October 24th, 1942. Dear family, I received a V-mail letter from Mother yesterday. It was the first mail from home in a long time. I am still okay. I don't have any pictures from home with me now, so if you can send me some, I'd really like it. Some of the things that happen here seem like a fantastic tale even before your eyes. Hunting season isn't over yet by a long shot. Tell Eugene I want him to take 4 years of college without stopping and to join nothing. Lots of love, Sid.
My friend Eugene Sledge and I were very close, all through grade school, all through high school. We were full of nonsense and pranks. But I warned him to join nothing. I told him not to join the Salvation Army, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, or anything, just to join nothing. And to prove he was demented, he went on and joined the Marine Corps.
Back in Mobile, Sid Phillips' best friend didn't want to miss any of the action.
Prompted by a deep feeling of uneasiness that the war might end before I could get overseas into combat, I enlisted in the Marine Corps at Marion, Alabama. The recruiting sergeant asked me lots of questions and filled out numerous official papers. When he asked any scars, birthmarks, or other unusual features, I described an inch-long scar on my knee. I asked why such a question. He replied, so they can identify you on some Pacific beach after the Japs blast off your dog tags. Eugene Sledge.
I am for the immediate removal of every Japanese on the West Coast to a point deep in the interior. Let him be pinched, hurt, hungry, and dead up against it. Let us have no patience with anyone whose veins carry his blood. Personally, I hate the Japanese, and that goes for all of them. Henry McLemore, Sacramento Union.
Order 9066 was the result of decades of ugly West Coast history. State law and community custom had barred Japanese immigrants from marrying whites, from eating in white restaurants, or living in white neighborhoods. Federal law had prohibited Japanese immigrants from ever becoming citizens, and in 1924 cut off immigration from Japan altogether. Only the American-born descendants of Japanese immigrants, called Nisei, were citizens, and some now owned the land their families had farmed so successfully for years, a fact many whites bitterly resented.
We're charged with wanting to get rid of the Japs for selfish reasons. We might as well be honest. We do. It's a question of whether the white man lives on the Pacific coast or the brown man. They came into this valley to work, and they stayed to take over. If all the Japs were removed tomorrow, we'd never miss them in 2 weeks, because the white farmers can take over and produce everything the Jap grows. And we don't want them back when the war ends, either. Frank J. Taylor, California Vegetable Growers.
In the weeks after D-Day, American pilots, including Quentin Annenson, continued to fly their missions over the fields and hedgerows of Normandy every day, trying to focus on the help they were giving to the men on the ground, and to avoid thinking too hard about the losses in their own ranks. Below them, the Americans were still inching toward Saint-Lô and the flat, open country that lay just beyond it. Sergeant Curtis Cullen, Jr., an inventive former Chicago cabbie, had shown that sharp prongs fashioned from Rommel's beach obstacles fitted onto Sherman tanks could slice through the matted roots of the hedgerows. Allied armor could now cut and blast its way from field to field. Weary riflemen were no longer expected to do it on their own.
An army of 150,000 men, women, and children invaded an American city. Whites, Negroes, Indians, Creoles, Cajuns. They came from every corner of the land, their roots in every curve of the globe. Moscow, Indiana, Warsaw, North Dakota, Hamburg, California, Milan, Missouri, Baghdad, Kentucky. Some came out of patriotism, some out of grim necessity, some for a richer life. All came to do a war job. These are the people, a few of them. Thousands more stormed through these gates on the graveyard shift and the swing shift. These are the jobs they came to fill, just a few of them. 40,000 workers in 2 great shipyards, repairing and refitting the torpedoed vessels of the Allied nations in giant drop vessels for the Battle of the Atlantic. The shipyards are the main war job, but while these men and women weld and rivet and file and plate, tens of thousands more are working round the clock in the steel mills, the paper mills, the gypsum plant, the aluminum plant, the Army Air Corps repair field, and countless machine shops, foundries, lumber, and textile mills. This could be any one of 100 great American war centers. It happens to be Mobile, Alabama. But the story is the same in every war town in America. A 150,000 people, 10 full military divisions, the civilian equivalent of Rommel's entire African army, bivouacked without warning in the narrow confines of one peaceful southern city. Less than 3 years ago, you might have walked blocks in Mobile without encountering a person. Today, you stop to scratch your head and a line forms behind you. No wonder there's such a chaos and congestion of traffic, and one has to butt one's way into buses at the plants and elbow through thick crowds again in town. Crowds everywhere. Crowds at the pay windows. Block-long lines of white-collar workers outside restaurants. Thirsty shipyard workers on payday waiting their turn outside the state-controlled liquor stores. Overcrowded schools staffed with weary teachers working in double shifts. And still 3,000 in-migrant workers' children had to stay at home this year until accommodations to care for them are rushed to completion. Dingy cafes crowded to the doors, and makeshift tent dance halls in crammed amusement parks. Old Mobile, sedate grand old lady in crinoline and iron lace, thrust aside 240 years of history and tradition, rolled up her leg of mutton sleeves, and pitched in to solve the complex problems created by 150,000 strangers dropped without warning and for the duration into the lap of a little city of only 78,000. Every available room was canvassed, utilized. Many an old magnolia-shaded mansion is now the roost of an orchestra leader turned expediter, a bond salesman turned leaderman. Old warehouses were reopened and peopled with shipyard workers and airplane mechanics. This was an upholstering establishment converted into a dormitory for women war workers. This was a neighborhood grocery store. These girls, welders, checkers, and machinists. This was a garage, now a barracks. Emergency housing for war workers. This man is one, a pipe fitter just checking in from San Francisco. Here, there, everywhere, on vacant lots and fields and creek banks, trailer camps, tent colonies, and shanty towns. All facilities were overloaded. In outlying sections of the city, housewives, to make sure of water for their daily needs, set their alarms for 2 in the morning to fill buckets and pans for tomorrow's drinking and washing and cooking. Mobile's understaffed health department worked day and night on what was really a national rather than a local civic problem, to provide basic sanitation, water supply, and waste disposal. But still they poured into Mobile from every corner of the nation. Farmers, clerks, and little businessmen, Indians, Okies, cowboys, and cotton pickers, hillbillies, Tennessee horse traders, and South American gypsies, answering the government's call for more and more war workers, many of them accustomed to better things, others just in from the brush where they used possums for yard dogs. In Mobile, as in every other war town, the same acute problem arose: homes for workers, housing for the in-migrant armies of industry. Mobile, as every American city of any size, had its slums before the war. But when a nation is at war, it becomes clear that the health and welfare of each affects the health and welfare of all. Lack of comfort, lack of rest, illness breeding in conditions like these mean time lost from production. Each citizen living poorly weakens the fabric of the society in which all of us live. These people and these conditions, too, suddenly become a problem to be faced in solving the health and housing complexities of a congested war town. The government stepped in. Vast housing projects were initiated and opened at low rentals to war workers certified by the personnel and housing offices operated by the plants in which they worked. By January 1st of this year, Congress had appropriated over $2 billion for emergency housing in America's war-boom towns. Here's how some of it was spent in Mobile. These are the slums we have seen. Slum clearance projects had been the local private enterprise of a few high-minded, far-sighted individuals. But in Mobile, such projects as these have become one of the obligations of good government and are being written off as part of the cost of building ships and planes and tanks and guns. They are rented only to certified colored war workers and are equipped with auditoriums, playgrounds, and day nurseries to take care of the children while their parents are working in the war plants. Dormitory units for men and women, accommodating from 400 to 1,200 single workers, equipped with recreational facilities, barber shops, gymnasiums, hospitals, community centers, and low-cost cafeterias, whole towns in themselves. Government-owned trailers moved in to meet the emergency for rent as low as $15 a month per family. 1,700 units to accommodate 7,000 war workers and their families, modern, sanitary, and scientific, built by the Maritime Commission and adjoining the shipyards in which their occupants are employed. These 2- and 4-family dwellings are typical of many of the smaller projects that are being rushed to completion on the outskirts of Mobile. Day nurseries to care for the children of women war workers are another problem the government is undertaking to solve. 5 small nurseries to 150,000 people is inadequate, but more are planned to counteract an important contributing cause of absenteeism and loss of valuable production time. For those that can afford them, there are modern permanent homes like these, built with the help of FHA loans and put on the market at rentals compatible with government ceilings. Decent housing, medical care, adequate transportation. As each of these problems is met, the ratio of production increases. In the shipyards alone, this is already evident. At the beginning, one ship was launched every 6 weeks. Today, cargo and combat vessels slide down the ways, one every week. And the story of Mobile is the story of every American war town.
They were enacting a little scene from the war. One of them had been wounded, apparently, and they had a medic who was wearing a tabard with a big red cross on it, and he was crawling towards them, especially towards the man who'd been wounded. And in his left hand, he held a row of bandages. In his right hand, he had a pair of surgical scissors. He was going to crawl forward somehow and help this guy, and at that point, the shell must have gone off above them. So there's like a waxwork, utterly incredible. And I stood there for a second wondering, what am I supposed to make of this? What's the symbolic meaning of this little grouping? That was the big question. And they were perfect. It was as if it were a sculpture, done by the most sophisticated artist.
We were ordered to take the town of Colmar in Alsace-Lorraine. We were ordered to take it in afternoon, daylight. Jim Thomas, our wonderful captain, said we could do this so much easier at night with much less casualties. The colonel said, "You have your orders, go." We went. Halfway up the hill, Jim got a bullet through his head. This is one of the people that I had a great affection for, a tremendous respect. He was a young 24-year-old Mormon, and we talked very often, and Jim was dead. No, Jim was the only case I can remember in the service that I had to cry.
The first time I killed anybody was really in self-defense when I saw a German leading a patrol coming towards me. I mistook him because of the way he was dressed for one of my own men. So I waved to him to indicate, I'm here, come on, you can come to me, it's safe here. I realized all of a sudden I saw him he looked at one of his fellows. He took his rifle off his shoulder. He was wearing it strapped to his shoulder, and as he raised it, I raised mine, and I hit him first, and he was terrified and died on the spot, and the rest of his patrol fled, and we captured them later on. That was the first time I ever killed anybody. I did it with the greatest delight because it saved my life, and I knew I could do it. I could perform. That's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to kill people and lead others in killing people.
I was in the dead center of the country, east and west, among people who had left Europe to get away from it. Germans, Scandinavians, Irish. They didn't really want to know about Europe, I think. I don't remember concern about what is going to happen to Europe. They call Europe the old country, old Europe. They didn't want it. They also felt that nobody was threatening them, and they were right. Hitler wasn't going to invade Minnesota. That was fairly sure. So that as long as Japan was being aggressive on the far side of the Pacific, and Hitler was being aggressive on the far side of the Atlantic, there wasn't really anything to worry about.
The operation was called Cobra.
The day that the Cobra attack, which was July 25th, 1944, there were 3,000 American airplanes that attacked the front along St. Lo. And we were in the first group. I think it was number 8 in the attack of 3,000.
The correspondent Ernie Pyle was down below, watching from a battered French farmhouse, with officers from the 4th Infantry Division.
The first planes of the mass onslaught came over a little before 10 a.m. They were the fighters and dive bombers. Our front lines were marked by long strips of colored cloth laid on the ground and with colored smoke to guide our airmen. We stood in the barnyard of a French farm and watched them barrel nearly straight down out of the sky. They were bombing about a half a mile ahead of where we stood. And then a new sound gradually droned into our ears. A sound deep, all-encompassing, with no notes in it. Just a gigantic, faraway surge of doom-like sound. It was the heavies, coming on with a terrible slowness in flights of 12, 3 flights to a group, and in groups stretched out across the sky. I thought it would never end. And then the bombs came. They began up ahead as the crackle of popcorn, and almost instantly swelled into a monstrous fury of noise that seemed surely to destroy all the world around us.
The bombs continued falling for an hour and a half. The bright day grew dark with smoke, Pyle remembered, and the steady roar seemed to fill all the space for noise on Earth. Then, the wind shifted. The colored smoke began to move toward the American lines. So did the bombs.
We dived. Some got in a dugout. Others made for foxholes and ditches. The feeling of the blast was sensational. The air struck you in hundreds of continuing flutters. Your ears drummed and rang. You could feel quick little waves of concussion on your chest and in your eyes.
American bombs killed 111 American infantrymen that day and wounded nearly 500 more. Their desperate fellow soldiers struggled to free them from the earth into which they'd been blasted. An American lieutenant general who had come to France to observe the bombing was hurled 60 feet. When his body was found, it could be identified only by a fragment of collar with 3 stars. It was the worst American friendly fire incident of the war. The bombing also blasted and burned and mangled thousands of German troops. Some maddened men shot themselves rather than endure any more of it. Tanks were tossed into the air and landed upside down. My front lines looked like the face of the moon, the German commander remembered. And at least 70% of my troops were out of action. Dead, wounded, crazed, or numb. 2 days later, on July 27th, the First Army poured through the newly opened gap in the German lines, out into the countryside, beyond the hedgerows. That same day, Quentin Anensen found himself back in the air over Normandy.
I was flying with Lieutenant Paul Bade. He was the element leader and I was on his wing. We were at about 1,000 feet over the trees. And suddenly I saw him start into a dive, a gradual dive. And as he started to go down, I was just close to him. I literally pulled up so our wings overlapped and saw him desperately trying to disconnect everything. His oxygen hose, his radio hose, his seat belt, and bail out. But he was already too low. But in that instant, while I'm overlapping with him, and he knows, in his mind, he knows he's dead, he looked over at me and glanced at me for just a minute, and then crashed into the tree. And I had pulled off just enough so I wasn't caught in the explosion. But in that instant, he knew he was dead. And I remember so many times thinking about that. He was an only son. His mother lived in, I believe, Richmond, Virginia. And I remember thinking, she does not know that her son was killed today. My friends were being killed off, and I was sending letters home to their parents. The day they were killed, we grieved for them, and we packed up their things, and maybe at the officers' club that night, we talked about the circumstances, what the angle of the flak had been, so we could try to avoid certain approaches on targets. But then we never talked about them again. We never talked about them again. It's just as if they did not exist.
Sam Hines was based on Okinawa now, close enough to the fighting so that from the doorway of his tent he could see the battleships offshore shelling Shuri. In 1 month, he and his squadron mates flew more than 1,000 combat missions, going after torpedo launchers, gun emplacements, submarines, and dropping both propaganda leaflets behind enemy lines and supplies to the Americans fighting below. And Hines, too, lost friends, shot from the sky, victims of their own errors, or simply lost somewhere over the sea. But the enemy was rarely seen.
Souvenirs for pilots were hard to come by. The infantryman could pick something off a dead Japanese any time, but we didn't see them very often. So that one night, when a person seemed to be trying to enter our area, the guards fired on him, killed him, and then everyone went down to see what was their first dead enemy. If he was the enemy, he might well have been an Okinawan who was simply driven mad by hunger and was trying to get in to get something to eat. He wasn't armed, he wasn't in uniform, but he was very dead. The next morning, the pilot I flew wing on, a captain, I went round to talk to him about something. He reached in his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief, opened it up, and there was the man's ear. And he said, "Got me a souvenir."
I had $2 silver. One was almost split in half because I had it in my pocket and a bullet grazed on it, and it saved my life. So that was naturally a good luck charm. And on this morning, April 21st, 1945, I had lost my jacket, I lost these 2 coins, and so I saw the platoon leader of the next platoon, and I said, "I think today's my day." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "This is the day I'm going to get banged." Sure enough.
Laverne, Minnesota, December 6th, 1945. Remember when you went to a different city to meet some relative you might never have met before, and you both agreed to wear a flower or something as a mark of identification for recognition purposes? They may have to revive that custom for the benefit of returning servicemen fathers who haven't seen their youngsters for a long time. Harry Broden was returning the other day from Minneapolis after his discharge from the Seabees. His wife had gone up to meet him. Also returning was Jim Argetsinger. And down at the train to greet their fathers were the little tots, Judy Broden and Julie Argetsinger. When Harry Broden stepped off the train in his excitement, he grabbed the wrong youngster and smothered Julie Argetsinger with kisses and hugs. But the mistake was soon noticed, and Judy Broden got her quota of kisses. Al McIntosh, Rock County Star-Herald.
When we came to the ship's dining room, we could hardly believe our eyes. Long tables with white tablecloths, white plates, 2 spoons, 2 forks, and what chow! Ice cream and red apples, too. Sasha Weinsheimer.
12-year-old Sasha Weinsheimer, her brother and sister, mother and father, had nearly starved to death during 3 years as prisoners of the Japanese in Manila. Now they were at sea, sailing home aboard the USS Caps, and the sailors spared no effort to make them and their fellow prisoners comfortable after their ordeal. It took 3 weeks to reach the California coast.
April 8th, 1945. I was up on deck with Mother when we passed the Farallon Islands. After a quick breakfast, we came up again. And there, straight ahead, we saw the sight we had been thinking about, talking about, and praying about for so long. The Golden Gate. Now we knew we were really home.
We got to San Francisco early in the morning. It was foggy, and we went up on deck just as we were going under the Golden Gate Bridge. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning, but the tip of the bridge was, this gold tip was sticking out with the sun breaking through. And then we cruised slowly in past Alcatraz and then docked just as the sun was just coming over the hills. To me, that will always be a beacon. That Golden Gate Bridge was a wonderful salvation for us. It's just like the Statue of Liberty back east.
The Weinsheimer family checked into a downtown hotel. "Look at this," her father said as he dialed room service. "I never thought I'd be dialing a phone again." They dined on steaks and potatoes and ice cream. Afterwards, Sasha's little brother Buddy spent 3 hours turning the water on and off, on and off. He'd never seen faucets before.